I think everybody in this chat room at one time or another has heard of a company called Sears and Roebuck. Okay? Sears and Roebuck was actually the first major department store credit card out on the market. And in order to get a Sears credit card at one time, you literally had to walk on water to get one. And they went through this very complex process to approve people to get a Sears credit card. And so they began to work with a company called TransUnion. I think they might even have a different name at that time. And they said, let's look at all the factors. Let's take all the credit card applications we've declined and look at these people's, not all, but a sample, and look at all the reasons why we declined them and find similarities in their credit reports. And let's take a look at the ones we approved and find the similarities, and then begin to develop some mathematical models so that we can use this scoring system. That's what they had in mind. And they began to roll that out in phases over time, and thus was the beginning of the FICO score, and that stands for the Fair Isaac and Company score. By the way, if you've ever wondered what FICO, F-I-C-O, stands for, it's the Fair Isaac and Company score. Fair Isaac was the consulting company hired by TransUnion at the time to develop a scoring model at the behest of Sears and Roebuck. And that's how it all came to pass. Now, this scoring model began to allow the automating of underwriting for issuing credit cards. And they've been adjusting and tweaking their statistical models. And now their credit score range, depending on your read, can run as low as the absolute rock bottom credit score, I believe, is 350, and the highest is 800. I have yet to ever see anybody with an 800 FICO score, not one time. But typically what was considered for Fannie Mae, which is the Federal National Mortgage Association, and Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, or what we call Freddie Mac, what they considered to be an acceptable credit score to qualify for their top tier and their best rates was a 680 FICO score, 680 or above. Okay, and there's a lot of people that fall between 680 and roughly 750. Okay, anything below 680 was considered to be subprime. That's where the term subprime comes from. Okay. The Fannie Mae at one time and Freddie Mac lowered that, by the way, to about a 620. The subprime, these companies that began to specialize in subprime loans, began to take them. I've seen them actually. A company had a program that would take a borrower with a 500 FICO score, 500. And let me tell you, to get no, not 500, a 560. In order to have a 560 credit score, you literally have to work at not paying your bills. You literally have to take all your bills, they come in, tear them up, and throw them in the trash can. You really got to work at it to get a credit score that miserably low. And yet, at the very height of this purchase and refinance boom, okay, we had companies offering those borrowers a 100% purchase. Is that not incredible? Yep, that's a fact. Those days, so when you ask about the changes, there you go. That's one of the big ones right there. I don't know why we're riffing about mortgages and all that, but it is what it is. So this is another thing that will fundamentally change. I'm hoping to see maybe a return back to common sense underwriting. I'm not saying that a person's credit score is not important. And I'm not saying it's not a useful tool. But when you look at loan files day in and day out for months and years, an underwriter should not necessarily be beholden to what that score is. Well, you know, it's just my opinion. I used to underwrite loans before there was such a thing as a credit score. Okay? When you can sell a loan basically to someone else using a credit based on loans granted on the basis of a credit score, and you're more or less compensated on the amount of loans that get closed, you're setting yourself and everyone else up to fail. And that is indeed what happened. So less people, I think, you're not going to have near the number of people that's going to be willing to speculate in real estate investments. I think we probably will never see the range and depth and breadth of exotic loan products like we've seen before. I think those days are definitely long over. I think people will be much more cautious in their use of credit. It's going to be, I think if your business is based on goods and services based on disposable income, I think you're going to have a tough time for a long time to go. There's going to be greater emphasis, I think, on saving money now than there was before. You know, it's just, I think people are going to be cautious for many years to come. You know, I'm sure some of us have grandparents who lived through the Great Depression, and if you see how they managed their finances and their resources, you know, these are people that watched the banks collapse. Exactly, just for the ones who don't forget. I mean, they went through the Great Depression. My grandparents went through it. They would understand what it's like to actually go to bed with nothing to eat. You know, so and there was no social safety nets back in the 30s. At least we have some today, but we're finding out how fragile those really are. There's no doubt America and many other countries, the world is going to be fundamentally different for many years to come because of all this. And we're not out of the woods yet. You know, this may be what's called a W-shaped recession. In other words, we had the big roller coaster down, and maybe we'll start to come back, and then another wave of stuff will happen, we'll go back down again. Oh, Tom left the chat room. Well, we start the actual recording of the show at 2. I'm just experimenting with this right now. I don't know whether we should maybe do the actual show part the first hour and then kind of quit taping it and BS around. Maybe that's how. I'm just playing with formats right now, everybody, and trying to get an idea what's going to work best for us. Maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do the actual agenda portion in the first hour. That Big Local says, I think you may be more optimistic than me. I feel like a lot of people have gotten themselves in lifestyles they can't afford but can't give them up either. Well, that's deep. You mean you're like talking about what we call the keeping up with the Joneses type thing? They've bought more house than they can afford, flashy automobiles they can't afford. Yeah.